today I'm gonna make a short presentation about Ukraine, what happened, how life was divided between and after, basically. And if I could have slides, would be great. Yes, thank you. It's lagging. Okay. So basically, Ukraine started building its digital country in 2019 in full speed, which means in 2019, Zelensky won presidential elections and said that, okay, the digital transformation and Ukraine is our priority, which means let's do it fast. By 2024, everything should be digital, all the services should be online or not exist, which means fully digital country based on a smartphone approach. No, not plastic ID cards, no computers, no wires as Estonia, no, all should be smartphone-based. And a special ministry was created, which is very important because there is a Ministry of Digital Transformation, and the minister is Deputy Prime Minister. It gives him power to also demand the change, which means he has a right to demand for other ministries, other authorities to make changes, make fast, to basically suggest legislation and so on. So at that time, Ukraine was not very advanced in everything. Let's say cybersecurity was not a priority. E-services were not really there. E-identification started happening, but not yet there. And then this guy, probably someone has seen him in news, Valery Gerasimov, his chief of general staff in Russia, said that, okay, the warfare these days is not only about military actions, it's also in cyberspace and information space. That now the war is a hybrid war, which means it starts with, as Susanna also mentioned, information space, which means disinformation, lies, chaos, drawing away attention from important topics, as well as cyber war. So he almost said that 2/3 of wars are in information space and cyberspace, and only the last activity is military presence, which means that probably some countries in sphere of interest of Russia feel already this information war, feel the components of cyber war, even though, thanks God, we don't have tanks. And after 24th, Ukraine woke up to a different reality, basically. And Ukraine was already the second country which was most attacked by cyber attacks after the USA. So it's not like there was zero and nothing happened and then it was full on. From 2021, when Zaphod military let's say, lessons, practices started, also cyber attacks started. It was always on pair, which means that military activities were supported by cyber attacks on the critical infrastructure, on, let's say, government institutions, depending what was the target, military target at that point. So also the cyber war and the information war was very much on pair with rocket missiles, tanks, and what's happening on ground. And during 100 days, there was over 680 attacks and on different government resources. Most attacks were held against the registries, government registries, websites, telcos, media outlets, critical infrastructure, basically. And yes, Microsoft has been very helpful in fighting these attacks and detecting and projecting, let's say. And yes, there was a classical warfare, meaning also in cybersecurity, that it wasn't like very unexpected. It was all good old methods, which means phishing, malware, DOS attacks, huge DOS attacks, but even sometimes there was a creativity, which means, for example, there was a news channel hacked, and the news channel was posted Zelensky deepfake, which said that Ukraine gives up, white flag, we're done. Yes, of course it was detected, but some elements of creativity are there, even though it's very like classical, good old malware and good old phishing. And Ukraine hasn't been aggressive, or it has always been defensive. But since 24th, Ukraine also said, as Lucas mentioned, that the way to protect is also attack, which means that Ukraine created probably the biggest IT force which means that Ukrainian IT specialists from government, from private sector, international private specialists can join a Telegram channel which gives you daily tasks about what to hack, what to do, what to DOS, and what is the daily task. There is approximately 260,000 IT specialists that have joined this. I don't know if I can promote it. I can, yes. IT Army Ukraine. And just as an example, today's task was St. Petersburg International Economic Forum is starting today, so let's visit online together. Which means today's task is basically Economic Forum, while Economic Forum was saying, let's divide Ukraine to bits and pieces and to small parts. So also the warfare in Ukraine is now going offensive, not only defensive. Also, their news sites have been hacked. Sberbank, biggest reporting system, and yes, Ukraine has been counterattacking. But basically the conclusions that it's always hand in hand, which means that it's not simply that this is, unless you have tanks on ground, nothing is happening. Ukraine saw early warnings from 2021, even before that, even from 17 and from times of Crimea, because nowadays the war is very much online and only the last stage is offline. It's very strong government-private cooperation which has helped Ukraine to create new solutions to address the wartime issues. We will talk about it in panel soon. But also government has been very agile in approaches. Agile meaning legislation, that it's not like you have to follow GDPR in the times of war. With all the respect to GDPR, there is a war, which means that very many exemptions have been made very fast to adapt to the situation which you have. Very many new solutions have been launched to support these military activities. For example, most popular in a bad way application to download from Google Play is you heard the sirens based on your GDPR location where you are when you have this alarm on about the missile strikes. Then we have even 300,000 people have joined a Telegram application which is called eVorok. We have an enemy where you can report enemy activity. I saw a tank here, I saw some, Z signs here and so on. So it's basically report information on any hostile activities. And the government is not saying, oh, what about data protection? The enemy has also his rights to, not to show his tank or something. And also government has been very agile in regards to defending information system. And of course, when it's peaceful times, you restrict the possibility to protect your information systems. For private companies couldn't defend government systems. Now also the private-public partnership is very active, which means that also private companies can be part of the government defense system. And also government has been very creative in regards to, okay guys, what do we need? We need communication. Communication might be down, so we need Starlink. This is a post from Minister of Digital Transformation. Elon Musk, while you try to colonize Mars, Russia tries to occupy Ukraine. While the rockets successfully land in space, Russian rockets attack Ukrainian civil people. We ask you to provide Ukraine with Starlink stations and to address saying Ukraine to stand. Elon Musk reply, Starlink service is now activated in Ukraine. More terminals coming. That means very creative and solution-oriented approach. And it's very interesting test ground also for many new technologies. As you know, war, unfortunately, is a booster of defense sector and also in IT sector. And in Ukraine, we have even Tesla power walls now in Dnipropetrovsk, so that the critical systems would be up also when the power goes down, because the power and infrastructure has been one of the main targets to hit. So the lessons learned is that it's never too soon to start defending your cyberspace. It's never it's not very likely, let's address it when it comes. When it comes, it's too late. and it's already coming because we're already in the sphere of interests of the same aggressor. Also, government systems that were targeted were critical infrastructure as well as media. It was extremely important to keep the media up so that there would be like adequate information about what is going on, about your regional media and so on. So critical infrastructure is not only like banks or telcos, and telcos have been real heroes. It's like connection hasn't been down almost at all over Ukraine, even though it has been targeted by all kinds of strikes, military, cyber, any kind of. I woke up at 24th also in Ukraine, and when I woke up, I of course sprinted to ATM, to bank machine, to take out money, understanding that the banks will be targeted, then SMSing my friends thinking the communication will be down, and I drove all through Ukraine and nothing was down even for a second. It's very cool, the country which had like minimum cybersecurity readiness is now one of the coolest cyber countries. Very proud. And private-public partnership is probably the next topic we're going to address. Yes, Annette.
Thank you very much, and I can never thank you enough. And the job that you're doing there is just like wish you the best of luck and what you have done before. Really, I admire everything yourself and then also the entire Ukrainian people as well.
Thank you.
You can have a seat here because I'm happy now to introduce our next moderator of the next session, who is Sandra Sära. She is the Data Policy Director in the Estonian Government Chief Information Office. So happy to welcome you on the stage.
Thank you so much, Annette. Thank you for your presentation. Let's keep the man between us. Yeah. No, okay, sit next to me. No, we'll have one more person. Okay, so welcome everyone and thanks for joining us in this very interesting panel. It's going to be dominated in this physical room by women, so this is going to be a nice change. But we're going to have some of our colleagues joining us online, unfortunately. They didn't want to travel to the nice summer of Estonia. But, yeah. Estonia is known for its music, so we like to represent this to everyone. So again, thank you from my behalf and welcome to this lovely panel that we have in a hybrid mode these days. Hybrid, as you can see, is the key word of the day. But today we're going to discuss a bit more concretely about public-private partnership, and specifically our panel is called Public and Private Sector Cooperation in Critical Infrastructure Protection and Advancing Digital Transformation in the Region. Wow, so lengthy. So in a few words, we're going to discuss how we can prepare ourselves exactly for the times as we have in Ukraine right now. Because luckily Elon Musk did step up, and as you mentioned, Starlink, today we have more than 10,000 stations that have been shipped to Ukraine by Starlink. So, but you know, these guys might not always step up. So how do you foster these relations? How do you build your public-private partnership for the protection of critical infrastructure to be ready for the worst of times? And for this, we have a lovely panel of 5 people. As mentioned, 3 of our colleagues are online and 2 of my colleagues are here physically in the room. So we're going to start with the ones who didn't come to Estonia, and just going to ask you to quickly introduce yourselves and give some opening marks. What thoughts do you already have based on what we have discussed here today? And Gatis, I would like you to start, please.
Yes, hello, my name is Gatis Ozols. I'm a Deputy State Secretary on Digital Transformation from Latvia. In context of the discussed subject, I think that we see that currently in public and private partnership is essential to ensure a smooth digital transformation of not only of our society, but also economy, starting from financial services that are mostly ensured by private sector, identity services that are on both sides, the private and the public side, and other essential services that are cornerstones of digital economy. And we see that also this digital transformation is changing the face of this critical national infrastructures as we traditionally know it. We see that traditionally it's not that anymore. It's this critical infrastructure is in control of only the government, such as financial service, broadcasters, as just mentioned, media, health services, and so on. So the national security scope is getting broader and broader. And the question here comes: do we align also our security measures with this state? Do we realize that on the conceptual framework that the critical infrastructure is more in the hands of the state institutions, or we are approaching the security and national security framework in more like multi stakeholder or kind of manner? Then we engage also with private sector, with NGOs in ensuring the national security capabilities. And as we are talking with some examples, we were asked also to provide some examples. We see that in Latvia, for example, I think it's in not only in Latvia, in several countries, we have good partnership models or examples between private sector and public sector in ensuring this security, such as information technology, security, incident response institutions that beyond its primary mission to provide support to public institutions, it also provides support also to entrepreneurs and companies, and also vice versa. The private sector and internet service providers provide security and assistance to when government information systems are attacked, as it happened recently with DDoS attacks and others. So the partnership here is built. And also in this model now we see that also the global players play essential role, such as they were mentioned examples of Microsoft or Starlink, and recently, some weeks ago, also Latvia to provide the license for Starlink. So we are at the moment, we are, as it was mentioned by Ms. Merilo, that we have to be prepared before we need to do. We need to use those capabilities. So I think we'll go deeper in the next discussion, so not to take too long time for this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think your last remark is exactly where we can take it off. And Edvinas, would you like to share your ideas, briefly introduce yourself, and discuss the idea, how do we prepare ourselves for the times of war?
Hello, colleagues. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Actually, I was thinking that over my 20 plus years working in government, critical infrastructures, I always find that we find new ways of doing things when crisis comes. It means that usually in a peacetime, we're sitting comfortable in our sofas and we try to find ways not to do something more. But when something happens, for example, financial crisis 15 years ago, annexation of Crimea, COVID, and now war, makes us turn on our critical thinking and find new ways of cooperation and of doing business together. For me, it's obvious that we can find solutions together, that governments and critical infrastructure and business and people are working and cooperating together. And those examples that happen in Ukraine nowadays show it very perfectly. Lithuanian people donated a huge amount of money, 6 million euros, to buy Bayraktar to Ukraine, right? Starlink, Microsoft, Google, and other companies work very close with governments to support their military. So we are all in one boat, sitting and protecting ourselves. So for me, it's a very good time to once again try to find new ways of doing things together. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't agree more. And I think Lithuania was also a great example where citizens stood up. So we talk about public-private partnership, but we should also refer to partnership with the individuals or the citizens. And Lithuania is a great example of that. Okay, and Antti, can you please introduce yourself and give also your opening remarks?
Yes, well, hello everyone, and this is Antti calling from Helsinki, and fortunately couldn't be there today, but that was because my colleague caught a COVID and had a positive test last morning. So in that sense, it's more useful for me to be here. Anyway, the topic is really topical, and it has raised a lot of questions in the Finnish companies as well. And I'm ahead of a Digipool secretary there, and my responsibility is to keep up the operations of a network of companies which aim to enhance and develop their own resilience through making continuation planning and preparedness planning within themselves. And from that network of companies, the public-private cooperation is really close to our heart. So we basically always have someone from the public side and from the private sides together at the discussion at the same time. So that's kind of our everyday work that we do here. And the structure that we work in is pretty unique in the international scale. So in that sense, similar structures are not available in every country. And we are anyway closely cooperating with the National Emergency Supply Agency, which is government agency, and but their funding doesn't come from the government's funds. It has their own funding behind that. So in that sense, it's a really unique structure here in Finland, and it emphasizes the importance of the companies cooperating with the government officials. Basically, no official can cope with themselves. They need the companies to get along. And that didn't come clearly in the previous presentation from the Ukraine. And that's something that I'm really looking into to hear how the companies have actually helped the Ukrainian government to work there, how the procurement there behind that has worked, and how that could be achieved in for example, here in Finland.
Thank you so much, Antti. And now we're finally moving back to the room here, and I have on my left side Kalev, and I think you're the embodiment of public-private partnership in Estonia. I mean, when we talk about our digital government, we have to talk about the basic infrastructure, and definitely what you're doing is what we crucially need to maintain and what we can consider critical infrastructure. So, please.
Yeah, thank you. Here probably from the ITL today and representing everybody in the group there, but also luckily I'm also representing both the Infobalt and Licta here, because we are a member of Latvian and Lithuanian associations as well. We talk about the necessity of this cooperation between those sectors, and we have to kind of start from that there is no Baltic internet, there is no European internet, there is no private or public internet, there is an internet. And yeah, there are discussions about whether we should cut off somebody, or whether North Korea has its own internet or it doesn't, or whatever North Korea has, is it called internet at all? But until we are talking about the internet, then we are talking about cooperation. If we are maintaining services based on that technology and this infrastructure underneath, then essentially we are talking about cooperative network, and there is no way how to kind of cut off somebody. And the learning points, I think, that are from the history are not very well shared, and even looking at the current state of different Baltic states, and we haven't got yet the reason to become a member of Finnish association. We are trying to improve in the future, of course, but we are kind of having significantly different approaches to the way how we address the country's internal community in free countries, and have no clue how Finland does it. And we don't share the pros and cons of one or the other. We don't learn from each other in that concept too often. We note, however, sometimes, yep, they're doing it differently. That thing works there, but not here. we are different. Like we are Latvians, we are Estonians, we are Lithuanians. Therefore, it doesn't work here. It doesn't help to think like that. But I would say that the essential thing to start off from is the information sharing. And I think that the previous panel also addressed that this is the easiest, the low-hanging fruit that should be there. And if we are able to kick off that, then the discussion starts. Until we are closing the information circles and saying that there is this need to know basis information all the time, and we are saying in a separate rooms very important statements, and then saying that but it's need to know and therefore it cannot leave this room, and therefore all the people outside of this room have no use of that information shared. Until that happens, nothing improves. So, yeah.
I hope there are not too many of those long-hanging fruits, that we have picked them already.
Oh no, there are many of them still left.
So we could be better prepared. And with this, I mean, I don't need to introduce or ask you to introduce yourself anymore, but maybe I'll just kick it off into the discussion then. And so we also all talk about how to be prepared, and Ukraine was somewhat prepared. But do you see other countries are actually now taking this as a lesson learned? Do you see that other countries are thinking, okay, we need to be more prepared, and they are doing more for that? Or are we still thinking this is not going to happen to us?
No, we're still thinking this is not going to happen to us, and even the countries in the danger zone are really thinking that it's not highly likely. It happened. It's very highly likely, unfortunately. But yes, talking about PPP, thank you, Lithuania, for Bayraktars. Appreciate it, because you probably know the people of Lithuania gathered crowdfunding 5 million euros to donate to buy Bayraktar for Ukraine. So this is not quite PPP, but still nice. But in regards to, I'm afraid that we are not ready for war times, also in regards to legislation and yes, procurements, which means our legislation that is meant to protect us might be working against us in war times. Which means that we're building these borders and protection systems and GDPRs and privacies and all the kind of barriers which will not work in a wartime. And just imagine that, unfortunately, you will not have a parliament that can vote for new laws. Maybe we should test our laws and ask, okay, how would that work in a wartime? How will we procure in a fast procedure? So that we can solve our problems without amending legislation. It's not very realistic. So Ukraine was surprisingly smart. I'm very proud, actually, to adopt this kind of legislation, which could be amended based on, if we have maritime law, this situation changes, we have force majeure, we can make different decisions, and it's also accounted. So I think we should definitely test our, not only systems as technical system, but legislation and procurement and so on, to be ready for what if happens.
Estonia has a different model, of course, for crisis situations for procurements, as we know. We have the same procurement limitations, but then if you have a bold minister, then they do the procurements and then they will be sued later. That's the Estonian model for.
Yes, but sorry to argue, but then we have examples also for e-health when we had COVID and we simply couldn't connect the systems because we couldn't, because there was GDPR, data protection, blah, blah. It's a reality what happened that we couldn't develop the systems, we couldn't integrate the systems to meet urgent needs.
Yeah, but I think there's also important understanding that in a case of this kind of a crisis, we often do mistakes, and the huge mistakes also, and maybe the lessons learned yet to be discovered in this Ukrainian case as well, in a sense that we will sacrifice privacy for availability for integrity, and so on. Mm-hmm. And we find out later what actually happened. Mm-hmm. But yeah, at the wartime, any decision is better than no decision. But also not deciding is a decision, and it might also have consequences. So yeah, it's not a very straightforward and easy thing to do.
Any decision is a good decision. Maybe Edinas, I would like to ask you quite early. Yeah, you can still hear us and see us. Aiti, you wanted to interrupt. Yeah, please come in.
Yeah. Yeah, one comment from Finland. We noticed already during the corona pandemic that if you need to do something fast in order to kind of react to a crisis, you need to be more agile when it comes to the procurements. And we were making the corona application here in Finland for everyone to use, and we spent over half a year just procuring that, and that doesn't really help when it comes to a crisis. That means basically that we need to be more agile when we are purchasing help for our government needs, and that basically the only way that we can come around that is basically to have some existing cooperation or contracts with the companies that we can use to buy some work whenever needed in order to do something like that. So that's one conclusion that we have come up with, and it's not an easy task to solve due to the legislation that we have. So we need to make some changes. And that's not even the wartime is different. This applies to the kind of the normal time, gray zone events that we are facing here before the actual wartime.
Would you normally think Finnish government is an agile government? I mean, when it comes to NATO, then this decision was quite quickly at this point made. I mean, I'm not looking back into the past, but at this point. So would you say it's an agile government?
Yeah, and I've always said that we always find a way if there is a will. So basically, we can come around this, but it's a great example that we need to make some fine tunings here.
Thank you. And Edvinas, I wanted to ask you earlier, quite quickly after the war broke out, Lithuanian government declared a state of emergency. Were there any critical decisions taken at this time, or what was the overall learnings?
Well, to be very honest, we always try to prepare ourselves for crisis, and better or not so good, but testing plans and various precautions were made even before, because I believe, learned a lot from 2014 when Russia attacked Ukraine and Crimea was annexed. And from that moment, I believe there was a huge turnover in my country, and we saw that it might be reality. I'm not sure if another part of Europe understands that very clearly, but I believe here in East we very well analyze what Russia is doing, and we all name that this is aggressor number one for us. So we never believed that calm times will be always in this region, and nothing much actually was done, except that special, of course, authorities were ignition, and we started doing our work by monitoring and looking what are they doing in the region.
We're losing you a bit. We can't hear you too well. I don't know if it's the case in the room or for people online as well. Perhaps you can find a pair. Oh, now it's better. Yeah, if you're closer.
Yeah, it's better. Okay,
yeah.
So I'll be looking straight at the mic. So what I'm saying that I believe that in Lithuania and in other Baltic countries, we were all quite well prepared actually, and started monitoring process to see what's going on. For example, in Lithuania, I mean, on critical infrastructure, we did not see anything unusual or something very difficult and extraordinary. So nothing special. Not anything special was not active.
Thanks. Thank you. Meanwhile, we have a few questions from the WorksUp app, and this is very appreciated, so I encourage you to add more questions. I'm just going to drop it here because we discussed this already, and it relates to Starlink. So it's being asked, Starlink is great, but not perfect. It struggles with bandwidth, and satellites are not geosynchronous. Would it be a good idea for the EU and European Space Agency to partner with private sector and consider developing a robust and resilient satellite communication network? Who wants to take this? Who feels strongly about space? Go ahead, Janika.
Yeah, I love private space. But it's always about that oh, we can do better instead of improving. Let's try to improve what already exists and has a concept, and let's support what already kind of prototyped and start working. It's not let's cast it away and do it better ourselves. It's still the model of private-public partnership. PPP is behind NASA, behind the US defense industry. Why couldn't you support the solutions that have started working instead of saying it has bugs, let's throw it away, do it all over again?
Yeah, I would support the idea. One European projects are not a great way of doing better things. It's normally a great way of spending a lot of taxpayers' money. But
as we say in Estonia, don't do immensely big things. Start with smaller bits and pieces. But Gatis, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, just to jump in that the previous year, the European Commission already started the discussion of designing an alternative solution also on EU level. So probably there are some ideas already, and as I know, there is some alternatives also to Starlink in commercial sphere. But as it's already discussed, when we use all the tools we have, and if we have this tool now, let's use it and let's have it as a backup for any. But of course, we can do it and try to make it better. But yeah, I think we need to use that we have, and we can do preparation in background on other means.
Thank you.
Do you think? I like the.
Yeah.
I also like the idea that the minimum viable product would be a great place to start here, and in addition to that, I think that there is also technical solutions already available in Europe, for example within Finland as well, and we could take those into use for kind of officially into using this kind of backup communications method. Anyway, those are volatile systems that can be easily affected by for example, affecting the signaling that is in the air. But anyway, it would be one solution to give us more flexibility.
And we don't mind copying Finnish systems that work. As you know, our ID card is from Finland. So, but going back to a more general question or a general remark, I mean, when we talk about public-private partnership, we have to think about regulation and mandating some type of situation or relation with a piece of regulation or a piece of law. Do you think it actually works? Do you think if we would have some ideal pieces of legislation in place, then we could have even better public-private partnership? Do you think it's possible, or should it come still from actual relations, not mandated by law? Anyone who wants to take this? I see you already have your brain working, so.
Yeah, I see that colleagues also want to online quickly respond. So my quick takeaway is that definite regulation should be in place to allow things to happen. And is not a guarantee for things to happen. If regulation tries to guarantee things to happen, everything goes sideways. Then we are starting to do stuff because of the law, not thanks to the law.
That's a very good point. Because of the law, not thanks to the law. Edvinas, you had a comment, and then Janika, you.
Yes, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Perfect. Good. I have an example from my personal experience where I noticed that our legislation system is too huge and too complex. And when you as a government, want to partner with someone private, then suddenly the law comes and says, no, you can even not do anything for free, for example, as a demo, because you need to do a tender for free services. So something, not usual. You waste time, you need to prepare a lot of papers, you need to write technical specifications instead of just taking and doing things. So I believe in some cases we're too strict, and this is one of the barriers that does not allow us to cooperate in a quicker manner.
Thank you. It's a very good point. I mean, I've done a lot of public procurements myself, and this process is never easy or never fast. But Janika, you wanted to comment as well.
Yes, I just wanted to comment that we're starting to shift away in our EU mindset from everything that is not prohibited should be allowed, that we shouldn't create legislation on legislation on legislation, we should slim it down, not to make the laws even more perfect. The less we have, the more freedom we have. I still believe that kind of not everything should be regulated because it kills innovation.
Absolutely. And I'm a firm believer of legislation as an enabler and technology neutral legislation and all these keywords. But I mean, we see that the EU wants to regulate a lot, all the new technologies. I mean, we have those new grand regulations such as the Digital Markets Act, Digital Services Act. Now we're regulating AI. And the funny part is we haven't even figured out what's the definition of AI, but we still have a regulation on it. So this is fun. But maybe now moving to the topic of the EU and the regulation, how about digital sovereignty? Do you think Europe would be more prepared if we built more of our tech ourselves, if we weren't that reliant on the US or China or some third countries, but we were actually capable of producing everything we need here ourselves, whether it's chips, or whether it's the cloud services or whatnot technology?
What happened to global competitiveness still, and the best outcome comes from competition?
Yeah,
This is a public-private partnership too.
I agree here. I can't understand the reason why we have to regulate Chinese and US companies out from European market. Why cannot we compete them out? It's kind of surrendering up front already that we are not able to do anything that is meaningfully better. We just need to kick them out because they are not us. And this is like so lame excuse for doing it that I even can't understand the first argument there.
I'm going to use this next time. If I speak to a commission official, you're so lame when you talk about digital sovereignty. What about you guys online? Any ideas or thoughts about the digital sovereignty?
It's easier said than done because, for example, the Chinese are providing electric cars for Finnish universities to study on and make some kind of to develop technology based on their solutions, and we are fearing that they will provide also the electrical infrastructure for loading the cars in the near future. But we don't have the possibility of competing against something which is coming in free. So in that sense, it's not a fair competition anyway, whether we should compete them out from the market or not. In that sense, there should be some kind of healthy way of kind of enhancing the European products and their usage in Europe. So in that sense, that's something that it's easier said than done, as I already mentioned. But anyway, it should be done somehow, kind of encouraging the use of European solutions. That's the way to go. And then once they gain market, then they will be.
But my quick question to Finland then is that Huawei watches that are developed in Helsinki at the moment, then they are like Chinese or they are Finnish technologies?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer.
According to EU's customs code, by definition, then they are EU goods if they are assembled here.
No, they are research and development.
Research and development. Okay. Yeah.
In China.
Yeah, and the components might have a Chinese label on them. So.
Janika.
Yes, exactly my point. Actually, we see what happens to Russian aviation. Nothing is produced like in one country or two countries. It's very many million small particles. Why should you try to replace everything? It's like we can see from Runet and from Russian aviation the examples of what happens when you
try to be sovereign.
Yes.
Gattis wants to jump in very persistently.
No. I just want to jump in with the aspect why I see that in some point it is essential that we have some regulation and we have some borders. In the cases when the value chain is owned by one company, or then it's and when the competition becomes unfair, then I believe it's a place for a government to step in and set the rules that the competition will be open, that there is no such cases that the one company can own the whole value chain for some specific value, such as in data governance or so. So we see some examples that happens, and when that happens, then it's becomes impossible for other players in the value chain to jump in, because it's a protected market then becomes. Yeah. So I see there is some things, some places where the regulation have to step in this manner. Of course, we don't need to duplicate everything in Europe, but we need to see what are those essential areas for digital economy development where we have to have those capabilities, at least to have some our own or backup solutions, or at least a market of companies that can work in this area. So I believe there is place. And regarding artificial intelligence, I think the regulation and also it's on also these new regulations. I think that we try to find a balance in Europe between these value-related kind of securing the citizen and values, and from the other side, not over-regulating it, to put regulation only on those critical parts of the artificial intelligence, as we try to define at the moment, which is this critical, but still leave some open space also for innovation, not over-regulate, so to kill innovation. So I believe we can find the balance, and I think in most of cases this will pay off for Europe to stay like binded to the values. So and in this digital environment.
Yeah, to take on the Kathy's note here, I would support the idea of really regulating the economy in a sense is meaningful. If we talk about restraining monopolies, it has been there for tens and tens of years, and it somehow has got lost in this digital economy. We are now trying to regulate it not in a traditional manner for somehow, but we should. It's still the same thing. We shouldn't allow monopolies to dominate the markets. That's still the case also in a digital market. And if we talk about this AI regulation and we talk about the way how we currently approach that, then there are also, I think that there is this good sense in that we are trying to regulate risks. We are trying to regulate out the biggest risks in the technology, but we are not trying to regulate technology. Because as soon as we get to regulating technology, we are in a very kind of a damp and not very good ground.
Absolutely. As my Maltese colleague put it, you're not going to regulate the pen. I mean, with a pen, you can produce hate speech. You can do whatever you want with a pen, but you're not going to regulate the pen as the technology. You cannot regulate AI, but it's high risk use, for instance. So in that sense, the regulation is not taking a bad approach. And we know that the US is keeping a close eye on us, and they might even copy paste this if it comes into effect one day. But let's see. I mean, we're not too optimistic as yet. But now going back to an audience question, we have something that's popped up on the app again. And this is steering away from regulation, perhaps. But it's more of a generic question, asking what the Baltics and Finland should do, in brackets, what we should learn from Ukraine's situation, in order to be more ready towards risks coming from Russia. I think we're doing already quite a lot. Antti, you already want to jump in?
Yeah. The basic job that we are doing is empowering companies when it comes to preparedness, and many of the questions that have came up is that what kind of what personnel do they have in their operations during a wartime that they can maintain their operations, and that's something that we are working on here in Finland, for example. That's very concrete action to figure out how you can ensure that your operations are running well, and you have the personnel to do it. But that's kind of a no-brainer in that sense. But the technical questions and one topic that hasn't really been considered in the preparedness plans is that in Ukraine, many of the IT systems have really been destroyed, and the use case of being destroyed is not considered as much as for example, information theft or random ransomware or use cases like that, because course, tendency is to think that we have something valuable information that the criminals are interested in. But in the wartime, it seems that the destruction is also an option, and that has to be considered in the companies. And how you can kind of return to keep up the operations after your systems have been destroyed. And that's a use case you have to consider.
Absolutely. Janika?
I mentioned many things, but one thing is a flexible cooperation between government and companies, which means not really based on procurements and based on we need it tomorrow, let's launch it together, whoever makes it first, we're going to roll it out and use it, which is totally the case of Ukraine. So many private initiatives have become public just in one click, basically, because we need it, because we have to act fast, because we have to be agile. Let's tomorrow think about how it fits in peacetime regulations.
Hacking the crisis, I like this. This is a very good approach. As I don't see who... go ahead, Edvinas.
Yeah, we have a huge discussion for many years in Lithuania about data centers and where should governmental data should be stored. And now I see that we need to reshift the model and physical location, whether it's outside the country, whether it's in a cloud, if it is a new technology like blockchain. But we should find new ways how to store our critical data and be sure that we can restore it after, for example, our systems are triggered and usual operations in the country should be restored. For example, health system, it's absolutely 100% digital. So what would happen if we need to restore it on a different infrastructure and start providing services in hospitals for citizens? So this should be in my country. I don't know exactly Estonia, but
We're losing you again a bit, but yeah. So I think you mentioned Estonia, and I can't believe we got to, the 35 minutes of the panel without mentioning data embassies. I thought if I was the one who was supposed to pick it up or someone else is doing it, but no, I just remember I was at the conference in 2018, and I was delivering a speech, and I talked about the data embassies and explained why do we do this, geopolitical tension, where we are located. And then one high-level government official from Estonia came to me and said, you cannot say this out loud. You cannot say that we're doing the data embassy for geopolitical reasons. You say we do it because we have to be novel and we think of new technological solutions. But now it's very clear why we did this and how we were prepared. And now I don't think anyone would come up to me and say, you cannot mention this, right? Are there any such other great examples of being prepared by taking your data outside of the physical location of your country, or any such similar developments that help your countries being prepared?
It's again an eternal discussion about the cloud, yes. That classification of data, what could be stored in the country territory, what could be stored in cloud, I would say it's eternal discussion.
Absolutely. We're having this right now in the Estonian government as well, and I can say some people get quite frustrated.
Yeah, but I think the one thing to kind of discuss more than we probably have so far, and I see that the paradigm is shifting in one place or another, is about this closure of networks. And as a reaction to the war in Ukraine, Lithuania did an example exercise on shutting down Lithuania from the external networks, which in a learning curve doesn't make any sense. If you learn anything from Ukraine, then Ukraine has benefited from the fact that Twitter works, that you can actually send out messages from Ukraine to the world, so that world knows what you do there. And then we are coming and taking the lesson from Ukrainian war, and then we are saying that how can we be like closed network within Lithuania? Why? And to discuss a little bit more in Estonia, the same. We have sort of a historical learning point at some point that, we discussed that in 2007. That, let's close the stuff here. And this year, last year, when we just discussed that, I think that nobody in Estonia thinks that we should close Estonia. Yeah, we should keep the bad guys out. But it's a different story than being on our own, in our own corner. It doesn't help anybody. We need others. We need more connectivity in a wartime, not less.
Absolutely, absolutely. Jaika.
Absolutely, and we need e-services that could be used at any time, from any location, from any device, which means like really agile. And I totally agree that access to information is crucial in so many ways. It reduces panic. It lets you connect you to close ones. It's information, getting the information. So it's critical to keep the connectivity up, really, not down, but up.
Yeah, because I would say that in a wartime, something definitely will go down. It's the question of how do you communicate that something is down and what happens to this, to the people. And that's what you have to work with. And not so much that everything is kept up. You're never ever going to do that.
Antti, you have been quiet for quite some time. Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, well, I can only agree on the notions that has been given there from every country, and here in Finland as well, we really have to figure out how the cloudification should be done for the government systems, and we have some certain restrictions, for example, on the healthcare sector that the data is being kept here in Finland, and that's really something that's not helpful in the time of crisis. So there will be some kind of hybrid solutions, I believe, in the future, and the cloudification will be essential. And I think it's really a funny situation in the sense that all the companies operating in Finland, I think they have well utilized the possibility of cloud already, because they are international companies, at least the biggest ones, and in that sense it would be kind of sad to see that when a war comes, that the government couldn't operate without those companies operating internationally. So in that sense, it's kind of a paradoxical situation.
Yeah. Thanks so much. So let's fast forward now to after the war, where Ukraine has won clearly, and we're back to building the country up, or working on building the critical infrastructure or technological solutions or everything we have to do to restore Ukraine. Do you think public-private partnership will play a big role there?
It has played all the time. It has played in the developing the Ukraine, which I think will be very, very cool because it has a very novel approach. While we have legacy and heritage and 20 years of old technology, Ukraine can start from basically zero. It started from 2017, from what is the latest technology, what people use. People use smartphones. Many actually solutions that have been developed in Ukraine were later developed in other places. Even our e-ticketing system in Tallinn, Ridango, developed wireless NFC-based payment system after Ukraine, because Ukraine said, come on, we have bank cards, we don't need these readers and so on. So I really believe that Ukraine will be this driver of innovation because of not having this old legacy, and because of being agile in legislation, and because of engaging the private companies and doing it all the time.
Yeah, innovation comes from the limitations. So I think that after the war and build-up of an ecosystem means that we have limitation in time. It is needed quickly. We definitely have a limitation in resources. Probably we didn't have a huge amount of money to spend there. So it is a perfect place for innovation. It most probably will have a huge amount of new things.
Yeah, and then you will not have the legacy problem that we might have in Estonia right now, or that we have in Estonia right now. So this will bring Ukraine to 2.0. In government's words. Okay, so I think we should, be wrapping this discussion up. It's been so fun to have this discussion with you, and I think what came through all of the statements that we made is more flexibility. And just yesterday, I had dinner with a colleague of mine who's Estonian representative in one of the agencies related to space, and she said she was in this meeting. And there was a question about helping Ukraine. And then one country said, yes, of course we should do it, but Ukraine hasn't fulfilled all the criteria that they need to do to ask for our help. And then another country, and these are the usual suspects, said, yes, of course we should help them, but they indeed haven't fulfilled the criteria, so we cannot start doing this right now. So my colleague stood up and left the room, and then other countries later thanked her and said she behaved in a correct way. But I mean, we need to be more flexible. We need to be more humane as well. We all understand the procurements as they exist today, they don't meet our needs anymore. And if we're in a situation of war or in a tense geopolitical situation, as all of our countries actually are at this point, we need more, and this is such a funny word, but it's called flexicurity. So flexibility and security, and we do indeed need that. And we have to admit ourselves that we cannot only be living based on regulation, and we cannot only think what we need to do in order not to break the rules. But I would give you each now 1 minute to sum up what we discussed here today and what is the most important thing that you're going to pick up from here. And perhaps what would you like to say for others that they have to listen to Ukraine now, what they are saying? So how would you encourage others to listen to Ukraine? I'm going to start with Katis. I'm going to start with you.
Yes. What for me came after discussion is that we need to be prepared before everything happens. So actually, a lot of effort we can. Or we can be more flexible at the situation if we do a good preparation work in ahead to organize the procedures or to organize legislation. So as when situation comes, if it comes, and we can be very flexible and agile and fast. So actually we can use this time and actually I think this review of regulation will help even if the wartime doesn't come. So it will help just to clean out all the mess that we have after those years of building the different regulations. This is one other aspect that was not touched by us in discussion, but it was seen in the presentation from Ukraine, and maybe you can reflect on that. I saw that there was also one of the most essential elements is the human factor, the experts, and how we are prepared to organize our cyber experts as we need it if the time comes. So we have put in place already now those procedures. For example, we have this National Guard Cyber Defense Unit, and we see that during this time it gains like a popularity in citizens, and this the way how we attract citizens and crowdsource citizens for specific tasks. Maybe you can reflect on that, how effective was that, how essential was that. And so we need also to take into account this aspect, not only to think about those practical and technical things, but also how we organize our experts and possibly citizens for different tasks. So that's from my side.
Thank you. Now, Kati stole some of your time, so others have now 30 seconds per person. Antti, would you like to give us your wrap up?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you all have the same problem that we have here with the agility of procurement when it comes to crisis situations. And but if that's the kind of the worst problem that we are facing, I'm really happy since at least we here in Finland feel that we are well prepared for any kind of events that are coming, and in that sense, procurement is not that important topic, or we can get over it whenever the time comes. And when it comes to the regulation, we didn't touch that really closely, but that will have an effect on the Finnish officials and Finnish companies, so that there should be reserved resources to make planning for the continuation, and even that is quite well in place here in Finland, because that's basically the job that we've been doing for years, and we are aspiring the companies to do that now voluntarily, and then we will have regulated kind of background to kind of lean on. So in that sense, I feel confident that we can come over any possible problems in the future.
Thank you, Antti. Edvinas?
For me, it's clear. I received two messages. One of them is that we need to very clearly learn Ukrainian lessons and adopt them in our countries and even in other countries, because it's the new reality. And second thing is, for me, it's also clear that alone government or some institution cannot do anything. So people, partnership with business and government should work together to find new ways of doing things.
That's a good conclusion for this panel, that people and governments should work together.
Yeah, I think that not only in governments, but also I think in the private sector, as I said, for me still the biggest thing is to open up the communication, the information sharing part. And what Ukraine shows is that when we have a crisis, we kind of can do that. It means that there is a possibility, and for some reasons we are afraid of that during the peace times. And what we see in cybersecurity now and on an international level is that somewhere the message has gone through. It was like a month or two ago, this kind of, I think, first ever time when Israeli military cybersecurity expert publicly, without saying who they are, but publicly debunked some of the candidates for post-quantum cryptography algorithms, stating that, well, they are not very good. They came out from their caves. So military should really be more engaged, more public in the information sharing. It's not about security of one or the other country or sector, it's the security of everybody. And that's what we should be worried about and focused on.
Yeah, we need more transparency in communications and more communications overall. And Jannika, you have our last words.
Oh God. Well, I think it's time to take more value-based approach. Basically, what you mentioned about standing up and leaving and Ukraine is ready or not ready, with all the respect, I think in so many ways in values, Ukraine has shown that it's more ready than most of the countries that are already in EU. With all the respect, yes, there is corruption. Yes, there is certain fight for it. Yes, it's a hard fight. Yes, the government, a digital government, is fighting against corruption, let's say, but still there are different corruptions. So it's very strange to hear preaching from Germany and France in regards to values. So I think it's time to take value-based approach.
Let's take a value-based approach. Thank you everyone so much. And for our guests here physically, I have some gifts for you. But those who joined online, unfortunately, these are not NFTs, so I cannot send them over to you.
No goodies to you.
Yeah. But thank you so much, and thank you everyone who joined us online as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.